Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Remi Alapo, joining you from New York City. Welcome to the Friends of Nigeria program, Friends of Nigeria Europe, in partnership with Diaspora Innovation Institute and NIDO. And today we're going to be discussing global shortage, the global labor shortage, and the brain capital theory as an African solution or as the African solution. Apologies, we got bumped off earlier, but I'm glad you're able to join us now. And we're still awaiting the arrival of some of our guest speakers, but bear with us. We're going to get started regardless. So I have Prince Akinwale also here, who is the CEO and founder of Diaspora Innovation Institute. And we've collaborated on many efforts to bring about, the efforts of Nigerians in the diaspora and the ways in which we can harness together our collective brain capital or capacity in working together with Nigerians in Nigeria. So today, because of the nature of the topic, the global labor shortage, the brain capital theory as the African solution. So there have been a number of reports on the global labor shortage, in which many countries, many developed countries, are actually, on the rise in seeking for, workers in their organizations or businesses. So we have our speakers that will be discussing or sharing from some of their own work that they've done in promoting the brain capital as the African solution. We often hear of brain drain, how the African continent is depleted of its most viable intellect because of one economic or political problems, or the japa, as many know it in Nigeria, of how you're running from danger. It may not even specifically be because of any aspect of migration, but because of just wanting to leave and run away and just keep running out of a scenario or situation, or to be somewhere else. So I was looking at a report earlier this morning, and then it was discussed in there that many companies are now looking to retain or outsource their work. The potential of their employees, they're short. There's a shortage in many organizations, so they want to retain or bring in workers from different countries to work with them. But how do they sustain the skills of those employees? Do they work in those locations in, let's say, countries in Europe, or do they go back to their countries, such as maybe a place like in Nigeria, and continue to represent the businesses or organizations in those countries? So I'm also looking very forward to hearing from many of our guest speakers. But let me share with you quickly. The report that I was looking at this morning was put together by a global organization called RSM. And the title of it is What's Driving the Middle Market Talent Gap? And this report had a survey of business executives and senior managers on, it was done in 2018, even though that's about, 5 years ago, but the trend, there's still a collective trend in the global market, especially after the COVID pandemic. And that even though this report was written in 2018, it was projected that by 2030, 2030, the demand for skilled workers would outstrip supply, resulting in a global talent shortage of more than 85.2 million people. So that is very incredible. What do we do as Africans looking to work together with Africans on the ground? Specifically, what do we as Nigerians in the diaspora do with our collective efforts to brainstorm together and provide, a solution of, brain capital to harness efforts together in ensuring that outsourcing or seeking for employees in many European or other locations worldwide, we help in sourcing for those talents. And I'm sure everyone on this panel this morning has something to offer in terms of maybe skills acquisition or training or talent management, or even promoting different, global entities in our various locations. So without further ado, I would like to bring on Prince Akinwale Ojomo, who is the CEO and founder of the Diaspora Innovation Institute, and he's also the main organizer for this event this morning. Prince Akinwale, please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Remi Alapo. I must really commend you for driving this on the part of Diaspora Innovation Institute, and actually for representing the City University of New York, where you teach, and do other good stuff, and even the Institute, which you represent as well. So as well as a beautiful sunny afternoon right here in Madrid. My name is Akinwale Ojomo, like Shirley said, and we welcome you all. And I see a lot of faces right here. I saw Chief Kanu, that has been a long time. Thank you for coming, and it's nice to see you and see people in the NIDO space coming together on this. This actually came out of a quick report or an article written by Abiodun. Abiodun is based in France, and of course we've interacted a couple of times, and as a matter of fact, it's one of the Diaspora 100, which is one of the award we gave to folks who have done work in this space since we are celebrating 10th year anniversary at Diaspora Innovation Institute. So having said that, we spoke about that and a very, very brilliant write-up, and I thought, oh, now, of course, before I had a conversation with Dr. Andrew Nevin, a PwC partner, and they've done a very brilliant report on how our human capital should replace our oil, especially in Nigeria and in some other parts of Africa as well. And of course, this gospel would need to be preached to the mountaintop. And quickly, I thought, even in the EU, the European Union, which they are trying to solve the problem which they have, European is aging. And of course, what happened now to the young, powerful, energetic youth in Africa? So this is actually a solution. While they are solving their own problems, we need to really be proactive as well, so that we can solve our own problems in our own way that will be kind of impactful to us and proactive about it. So I'm very happy to welcome you all. I see Abiodun, I see Chiwueze. He's been a very good job preaching this through the PwC. He's an innovative guy there, and of course, Abiodun as well, who has been doing this in the EU. So we thought, since I'm in Europe right now for a few months, that it would be a good opportunity to look at how migration and diaspora engagement is looked at and be proactive and lay our solution on the table so that we can revise the role and say, oh, this is what we want you to really be, have a solution. So that's actually the new engagement and the new thinking. And wow, that's the reason we are doing this. And as a matter of being proactive, we're going to quickly, officially, I know this, the Brain Capital report is on the public space, but we need to call the attention of the EU to that. So that way, when they are talking about their talent management, talent partnership, they should know that also that the African continent has a solution in how to really solve this problem, because it's a global problem. And of course, it has to be solved to make sure that at least Africa, on the other hand, has a more benefit. So I won't take much of your time since we have the gurus are here. Chiwueze is here, Abiodun is here to be able to give us the numbers, the graphs, and things like that. So my role is just to be able to really welcome you all. And again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to look at this as a very important part of how we need to really push the Brain Capital Summit. That's our next show. We're going to take it to state by state in Nigeria because we need to let the leaders know that oil going to Abuja for money or some of the other African countries, depending on one source of income, is no more. It's no more fashionable. It's no more. Even the CBN, by the way, in the earlier report today, the CBN governor made a quick remark that even the input of the oil into the foreign exchange reserve is zero. So to us, it's very scary. So we need to, they need to understand that the diaspora resources is powerful. And the way they need to really engage with us on how to really tap into this is what we need to really help them out. So we are taking it state by state and let them know that this is your new gold behind you. You need to tap it, and we need to tell them on how to tap it. So we're going to partner with PwC, we're going to partner with some of the state diaspora offices, we're going to partner with NIDO, some other relevant NIDCOM is there as well to be able to partner to let them know that this is the time to have a critical engagement. It's not going to be business as usual, so that way the resources outside in Europe, in North America, in Australia can be tapped. I'm not talking about remittances right now because a lot of people when talk about diaspora, that is the dollar sign that comes to people's mind. But we are beyond dollar signs. We have more. We have priceless human capacity that we can deliver. So thank you again. Welcome and enjoy the rest of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prince Akinwale, for your remarks. Now I would like to bring to the floor Dr. Obasekola, who is the NIDO chair for some goodwill message. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Obasekola.
Yeah, Dr. Alapo. Thank you very much, Professor. I'm extremely delighted to be here, and I thank the CEO and the director of the Institute of Diaspora Initiative for this institute for this laudable program of bringing us together to talk on how the brain drain is should be harnessed and become brain gain at the end of the day, because the whole world has become a global village where movement of people from one economic situation to another, and everybody looking for how to better their lives. And of course, this knowledge is sellable anywhere in the world where it's needed. And now that the world has become a global village, people's dependency of moving from one place to the other is high, very high now. People look for places where you can compare with where you are and get a better life. But as Prof said in our introduction, that our human resources be depleted in this situation because of this situation, because a lot of youth, a lot of professionals are moving from Nigeria now to different locations. But do we give up? Do we think we are losing everything? No, I think what we need to do now is how to think about how to get more value from them. How to bring back their knowledge wherever they are. Thanks to technology now, a lot of things which were not possible before, but now can be possible even though you might not be there physically. So we are building. I think we should think of the positive side of human migration, whereby we can rely on the economic and financial capital of these people that they are being, they are now claiming in those countries where they are, to bring them back on board in Nigeria. And recent times, of course, we were talking about the economic, model of the diaspora by way of remittances. Yes, but apart from the monetary part of it, there are other components of development which needs to be put together to make the country work, which is human resources. We have the potential, the actors are there, but of course, the enabling environment is what the government is needed to put in place in terms of whether investment or infrastructural conditions that make it easier for people to virtually, if they are not there, to contribute to the development of the country. But we have, feasibility capital, which I think, we also bring on board when we go outside the country, and people will, you are asking, oh, where did you get the knowledge that you are now, amplifying wherever you are. If you have to go to, for example, medical doctors, we have a lot of medical doctors outside the country now. Most of them not only coming from outside the country, but some of them coming from Nigeria. Like, when you talk about medical doctors, talk about University of Ibadan, for example. People we want to hear that, oh, okay, so there is an institute that can produce such good, professionals in medicine. So that's also visibility capital, which of course, if they are all in Nigeria, maybe nobody will know about university. So it's also part of what we bring on board by doing outside the country. Of course, we talk about political capital, which of course we're already, gaining in many places. A lot of Nigerian people of Nigerian business are now in political positions, very influential. But we need to build on that so that their influence will also benefit the country from where they are coming from. Like the Jewish are doing, there are a lot of Jewish lobbies, the Chinese, and I think we Nigerians in the diaspora need to also benefit or bring benefit to our country of origin through our political capital that we are built, where we are. So talking about, labor movement and shortages, we need to not give up, not to be despair in this aspect, but rather improve on what we have infrastructurally, so that people who are outside will be able to partner with researchers at home, engineers, business people, even government, in terms of exchanging of ideas based on where we are now and what we have been in that aspect. That's why it becomes a capital. So, like, it's not a deficit now. It's not a liability, but now it's a capital, it's an asset, which I think we should turn it around. And we can NIDO as an organization, like the other organization, European arm of it, we can be chairman. Is ready to always be involved in this transfer of knowledge that we gain having left the country, and also technological know-how in putting in place some of these deficits of infrastructure that is not making it smooth in applying the knowledge that I know government has tried, like a volunteer ceremony be established, but how much is that being utilized depends on the situation at home also. So security situation is very important. We need to also make sure that people feel comfortable in exchanging the ideas. That is intellectual property protection, which is also very important in exchanging of brain that we have in the field. We call it brain circulation. So once again, let me thank the creator of this program, and of course as a partner, because we have a standing subsisting agreement partnership with the institute, the Diaspora Innovation Institute. We will continue to be part of what we do, and we will continue to exchange ideas on how best to collaborate across the border. So once again, thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing what our experts people will talk about today. And maybe later on I have some contributions to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Obasekola, who is the chair of the NIDO organization. Now I would like to bring to the floor Mr. Kingsley Aikins, who is the CEO, Networking Institute. Mr. Aikins, are you here?
Aikins is not here. It's not here. Go ahead. please.
Okay. Who would you like to bring to the floor, Prince Akinwale?
No, go ahead. Both of them are here. Abiodun is here, and Chiwueze is here as well. So whoever goes first, Chiwueze can go first.
Okay, sorry for the breaking sound. Let's bring on Mr. Chiwueze Ihebuzor, who is the Senior Manager, Disruption and Innovation, PwC Nigeria. If you've been following us in the past few months, for these webinars, you would know that, Mr. Nevin from PwC Nigeria has been a guest speaker on a number of occasions, and we're very fortunate to welcome Mr. Chiwueze Ihebuzor today, who works with Mr. Nevins. And Mr. Ihebuzor, again, is a senior manager on disruption and innovation at PwC Nigeria. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Madam. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to represent, Dr. Nevin on behalf of PwC Nigeria. Thank you for the opportunity to come and make this presentation. I will try and be brief. And like Prince Akinwale has said, the article is available available on the web for everyone to sort of download and have a look at. But we thought to create a bite-sized version of it, which we can present and use to drive conversation, use to drive discussion. Please just confirm if you can hear me before I proceed.
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. So title of our report, Brain Exports, the Optimal Paths to Growing the Nigerian Economy. It's interesting that once we put this report out, it's generated a lot of, reaction. Some good, some bad, and I'm having challenges with moving my slides. We generated some good and bad reactions. Reactions in the sense that, people are thinking we're trying to say Nigeria should not focus on alternative sort of sources of growing the economy, which is not the case. But nonetheless, we'll still press on and try to achieve what we're trying to achieve with the presentation. I'm just having some issues navigating the slides. Please just give me a minute to just resolve this. I'm not sure why.
Sure.
Not sure. Is someone presenting? Maybe that could be why. If you could.
No,
maybe...
I just put on the flyer.
Oh, okay.
Since yes,
okay.
Let me know when you're ready. Then I'll remove it.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Okay. The screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation. So the title is really around brain exports and the optimal path, or what we think is the optimal path to growing the Nigerian economy. And the inspiration behind this article was really, the question behind it is we thought and we asked ourselves, okay, how can Nigeria achieve global economic superpower status in the next 10 to 20 years? So it's important that, to remember this context of the 10 to 20 years time frame. So we're looking at achieving global economic super status almost in record time, because no nation has actually done that in this short period of time. From a traditional perspective. And for us to answer that question, we thought, okay, so let's look at what really drives economies, or what drives economic growth or development, right? It's how much you export, like how much you can put out in the market to the foreign market, and how much FX you can earn, right? And we looked at Nigerians' top exports. We sort of ranked it from a revenue perspective, and we were looking at crude. at 30 billion. Again, this was at the time of the report. And remember, it's also important to point out that this figure is not from a net. This is more just value exported. This doesn't include or doesn't take into effect the cost associated with exporting that. Again, another top export, petroleum gas, 5.9, and then scrap vessels around 1.3 billion. Now, the traditional path to development suggests that countries like should go through, manufacturing, which typically starts with low-end manufacturing, where it starts from agriculture, then it goes to sort of that drives low-end manufacturing before we then go into high-value manufacturing, and before you then start sort of being able to export finished goods that can attract high amount of FX or high amount of income to the country. Now, countries like Singapore, Taiwan, they all followed these paths, but we're saying in today's time and age, the world we live in, these paths are, first of all, they're time consuming. They require a lot of investment, and sometimes the returns are not as great with regards to compare, or whether it's from a time to reap your returns or whether it's from a value of returns, they're not as great. They also require a lot of infrastructure, and in the case of Nigeria, where we all know that we have a serious infrastructure deficit, right? So, considering this path, given the Nigerian context, in the next 10 to 20 years, is not a viable option. It's not a viable strategy and that's our view, right? And we then go into say we know that Nigeria does have the potential. We're not saying that we don't. We do have the potential to export these things. We have, huge oil reserves. We have, booming gas sector. We have great, arable land, and we have the potential to do that. But we're just saying right now, the challenges associated with doing these things can be, there are quite a lot, and sometimes it just things we need to be a bit more creative with the way we think about paths of development. And we're not saying don't pursue these paths. We're saying you can pursue multiple paths at the same time. And to drive on this point, we give the example of the Dangote refinery, right? This was supposed to be the next best thing from a, this was supposed to leapfrog Nigeria from a development perspective, right? And just to give an example of how long these sort of investments take, I mean, it's been 10 years now or more, and the refinery is still not ready. So imagine an investor who would have pumped money into that. Up till now, there's still no tangible return. And if you also think about the product itself, and from an investment perspective, it's not very attractive in today's market, where a lot of investors are more attracted to sort of green projects. Crude or gas is a very sort of dirty investment, and there's a lot of move from a global perspective to move away from investing in these sort of things and focus on more green energy, right? So this is just a great case to show how, if we rely on following this traditional path, given the context that is Nigeria, it will be challenging to achieve, and we don't have that sort of time anymore. We don't have the luxury of time. We don't even have the luxury of capital, because we're not attractive from an investment perspective. So we now thought, okay, let's even look at crude, which is the thing that we're all sort of raving about from an export perspective, and let's look at how much remittances that is, exports from crude is driving. And we've seen that. We then also compare that to remittances from the diaspora, right? So these are people, I mean, we all know people who sort of outside the country, how much are they contributing to Nigeria? And when we compare it like for like, and looking at it at a net perspective, which is, taking out, not just saying, oh, we export 30 billion, what does it actually cost us? When you factor that in, we find that remittances from diaspora is actually more, right? And if you look at the 2020 chart, you can see that remittances from crude was significantly low, and that was because of that was really largely due to the pandemic. But if you notice the drop between the previous year for remittances, it's not as much as that drop compared to crude, and that just tells us that remittances are more resilient. Well, remittances from diaspora are more resilient than that of crude. So having that in mind, this just says that obviously there's a lot of potential, from the diaspora. And yes, we are looking at it from an FX perspective at this point. Then the question then becomes: are there any other ways we can sort of explore that market, or that area where we are sort of getting FX from, leveraging today's current time and given the technology advances that we are, that we see in today's world. Now, we've sort of set the scene now to say, given the urgency, obviously we don't have time, we need to develop very quickly, given the need to start moving away and start looking at more greener projects. What are those things that how can we actually, what's the promising path that we can actually forge? Because clearly the traditional path is not sort of doing it for us. And we then explored trends that are really driving or that are supporting this path that we're suggesting. And the path that we're suggesting, in case we missed it, is really exporting brains, and we'll get into what that means. Now we know that obviously COVID had drove a lot of remote work, and in terms of, there was that meme about what drove your digital transformation, and CTO, COVID-19, and COVID-19 had the highest responses, which is valid because COVID has made everyone more aware, more open, more sort of relaxed about remote work. So that's a trend that's here to stay, right? There's also a global war for talent, again driven by COVID. So because people can work remotely, talent doesn't have to be located physically in a location to work, right? So you can be anywhere. You can be in Finland, you can be in Austria, you can be anywhere. In fact, some countries are even shaping up okay. Maybe where did I get disconnected? Maybe I can start. I can just go back if.
Yeah, you can just start maybe from this slide that you have here.
Okay. So yes, and on this slide, we're really just speaking about the trends that are driving the suggested path that we're recommending, which is exporting brains, right? We're saying remote work driven by COVID. COVID has made it more acceptable for you to work remotely. You don't have to be in the same country to work for, or work in the same country as an organization. That has caused the global war for talent, which means that foreign organizations are willing to even hire people located in Nigeria, located anywhere in the world to work for them. So that's now driving a huge sort of push on outsourcing. A lot of roles are being outsourced, a lot of functions that you're even seeing things like medical services being outsourced, and that is driven again because of technological advancements. We have emerging technologies like artificial augmented reality, virtual reality, and that is really used to create that almost in-person experience, right? So these trends are driving what we call the ability for us to export brains. But where are we exporting these brains into? We're exporting it into global value chains. And on this slide, we're really just trying to explain what that means. So in a nutshell, there's a lot of text here, but in a nutshell, global value chains is just really, it's a phenomenon that occurs when the factors or when the sort of, the attributes or the assets for production are distributed, across the different groups. So, you have your legal function in Nigeria, your call center in India, your manufacturing in US. I'm just giving an example, right? So that's what global value chains is. And we're saying Nigerians need to be inserted. We need to sort of develop, or the government or the players in the space need to actually create an enabling environment for Nigerians to be able to be exported into these global value chains. And we give an example here just to say that, Nigerian talent is actually in demand in these global value chains. And we look at people that have exported themselves. From the entertainment space. Thames, who has we're seeing how much she's earned here, $300,000 just from exporting herself, her music. She hasn't left Nigeria if you think about it, right? She makes her music here, and she exports, and people listen to it, and she earns foreign, or she earns from foreign markets. We're seeing Giannis Adetokunbo, who's an NBA player again. He was born in Greece, but with Nigerian origin. But he's more sort of in the States, right? Exporting his brains, exporting his talent. Essentially, this slide is just saying that Nigerians have higher earning potential when they are inserted into, global value chains. And that's what we're trying to say. And we're trying to say that there's clearly a demand for Nigerian talent and Nigerian skills. And this is, okay, looking at it from an entertainment or maybe a recreational perspective. But now let's even look at it more from a corporate setting, a business environment. Now we think these four areas, if we were going to export, Nigerian brains, we think these four areas are the most sort of viable areas to export brains into. And so the first is really around programming outsourcing. So this is your software, and this is high-tech development. So things like building AI models, building software, building different applications and things like that, maybe ERP, software as a service solutions and things like that. And then we also have another sector which is around animation and gaming. Now we've made a difference between programming and gaming because the skill level required is quite different. So from a programming perspective, it's it requires a lot more technical expertise, whereas gaming is something that one can easily pick up, as opposed to learning to program for like a formal organization. Then the other sector is around business process outsourcing. Again, these are things like not call center in this case, because we've actually separated that from BPO. So business process outsourcing, we're saying things like your legal services, your accounting services. Again, these are also in high demand. And if you think about something like accounting, where there's an international standard, you really don't have to be in that country. What is required is your knowledge of that standard. And then we have the call center, again, which is an area that we think can be exploited because, again, Nigeria is a country, we speak English here, and some of these countries would require English speakers, and we have a lot of people. And in terms of the skills required for that, we think it's a great area because if you think about it, you don't need to go to, you don't need to have spent 6 years or 4 years in a university to have the skills to be able to sort of do a call center job. And to be fair, a lot of all these skills here actually, and that's one of the major attractions, you don't need formal education to actually, acquire these skills. You can get it through online universities. You can even do a course. You can, organizations like Google, I think once you get a lot of their certifications, I think that's good enough for you to work in the organization. So again, you don't have to spend so much time in school. You don't have to spend so much investment for these particular sectors. So that's why we think, they are attractive. And again, what's really enabling this sort of exporting of brains is obviously, it can't be oversized, is the technology. And we spoke to a few Nigerians who are sort of exporting themselves already, right? People that are working for companies from Nigeria and earning FX, right? And we sort of asked the question around, okay, what are your motivations? What's really driving, and how are you finding this whole, what's it called? The process of exporting yourselves into GVCs. And we asked questions around, okay, what motivated you? And obviously the prospect of earning FX was a dominant response. So we then thought, okay, what are some of the challenges you're facing? And interestingly, power supply, while they said it was a challenge, it wasn't the major challenge for majority of Nigerians. And this is because, again, Nigerians are quite self-organizing. So a lot of Nigerians have their own generators, have their own sort of inverters, or have their own power banks that they can use to power their equipment. So the major challenge for them was really around what's it called, internet and connectivity. That was the major challenge for them. And interestingly, we also asked, okay, so what's the long-term plan? Because there's this thought around thinking everybody wants to leave the country. And again, so we posed it to them, and the response, yes, while some said they wanted to leave, a good number, I think more than 30% said that they don't want to leave, they want to stay. And to be fair, when we even pressed further to ask the guys who want to leave, they want to leave because of challenges, which obviously, if resolved, they would prefer to stay. So we thought this was quite interesting to share because this was because there's a whole conception to think that everybody wants to leave the country, but that's clearly not the case. So just to provide more sort of explanation on what we're calling brain capital, which is what we're supposed to be exporting. According to the OECD, brain capital is essentially a human's mental, emotional, is a summation of his technical skills, his mental health, and essentially his interpersonal skills, how he relates to people. And we think that this in the future is going to become an important index for countries, and with regards to measuring things like investment attractiveness, right? So we have different indices to measure that now. And I think the OECD is working with Dr. Nevin to see if there's a possibility of introducing this as an index that can be used to measure a level of attractiveness of a country. So this is essentially what brain capital is. And if you think about it, most Nigerians are good on the technical skills. And again, those are even areas that we can quickly even resolve. And it's something that I think there's some efforts going there with regards to trying to upskill people from a technical perspective. But I think what needs to also happen to be able to be inserted is to make sure human beings are of sound mind, particularly in this digital age where you don't even get to see people you work with. So that mental health, mental well-being is very important, and appropriate soft skills as well, because you're working with people with different cultures, different backgrounds. So it's important to have all of that. So brain capital is not just technical skills. Technical skills makes up a good part of it, but there are other attributes that build up to that. And just to define brain export, we say it occurs when a Nigerian, physically in Nigeria, is inserted into a global value chain and exchanges their brain capital for foreign currency. It's as simple. That's what we call brain export. So it's not like we're taking out anybody's brain physically. And we're saying Nigeria has the great advantage from a population perspective, in the sense that 70% of our population are under 30. And when you think about that, from the current situation in the country, which is that obviously there are not enough jobs for the people. And when you compare that with the growing demand for jobs in continents like Europe and the Americas, then it positions the country as a sort of a great marketplace for those organizations. And again, those people don't have to leave the country; they can actually stay in Nigeria and work remotely for those organizations and earn FX, which would eventually contribute to the Nigeria's sort of FX earning. The other advantage that we have is that the number of technical talent we have, as at 2021. We had about 89,000 software developers, professional developers, right? So, and this doesn't count the people that, this is just what we call professional, recognized developers. We know that this number might actually be more than this. So again, that's a huge advantage considering the demand for jobs out there. I think that demand for software jobs is actually going to keep increasing as the years go by. And when you look around, things like minimum wage, Nigeria's current minimum wage is compared to a lot of countries is very low, right? And again, not that we're saying this is a good thing, but we're saying this sort of puts us in a position of advantage in the sense that obviously a foreign employer is looking for value, and one way to think about value is to see how you can obviously pay I guess not at pay fair value, I guess, or pay a good price for talent. So we have these advantages, and we think that if we tap into these advantages, our proposed strategy we can see the country sort of earn and drive development in the next 10 to 20 years. And just to sort of give examples of where this has happened, we looked at India and how they focused on it, and how they focused on outsourcing almost as early on as early in the 90s. And in terms of how much that is driving to the economy, the numbers are huge. I mean, you can see the numbers on the slide in terms of contribution from outsourcing and BPO. So India is a great example to give, and everybody cites India when they mention. And what did they really do? They were just quite intentional. I mean, they set up a city for talent. They set up hubs and things like that, and as early as the 90s. So this around being intentional with these things. Then we looked at a country again in Africa, Kenya. Kenya also had a vision sort of in 2020. They launched a vision they launched a vision 2030 to have about 7,500 BPO jobs. But they smashed that number, and now they've had to increase that number so their new target is to have 250,000 before 2030 inserted, into global value chain. So again, we're seeing countries that are intentional about this. I mean, Kenya started since as far back as 2009, right? The question then, one can ask is, what was Nigeria doing then? But the point of the takeaway here is that they had government support. There was foresight. Similar to us, they also had the young and skilled population, and again, benefits like being able, speaking English. I mean, they also speak Swahili as well, but English is also a widely spoken language there as well. So these are also some organizations there that, that currently do outsourcing. Now, looking at Nigeria, we're saying brain exports is already happening in Nigeria, where companies are already doing it. And we have companies like Tech Experts, we have Outsource Global, we have ISON Experience, we have different organizations actually in the process of hiring Nigerians and using their services to cater to clients who are not in the country. So, I mean, I think just trying to remember the organization here, I know that there's one that specifically handles all of MTN's call center services, right? So that's MTN Anywhere, right? And, you know, that organization is in Nigeria. And even from I mean, these are local players. I just wanted to highlight that. And even from a foreign perspective, to say that to you know, further lend credence to this strategy, we have organizations like Google and Microsoft coming to set up ADCs here. Those ADCs are supposed to support their own services across the globe, right? So, you know, if they didn't see Nigeria as a viable, you know, proposition for you know, from an exporting brains perspective, you know, they wouldn't be investing billions of dollars to come and, you know, upskill, build infrastructure that can house people, train people, and position them to be exported globally. So there's a lot of potential here, and you know, that's what this is really telling us. And again, just to drive home the point around comparing the traditional parts, which is exporting, focusing on exporting things like crude and low value items. I mean, why should we focus on exporting the lowest value, you know, product and possibly the dirtiest product, as you know, in the world today, right? And we export it in its lowest form and then import it, you know, in its highest form, you know. So unless we eventually build that capability to be able to export refined crude, then, you know, perhaps we should maybe divert some of that attention into exporting brains. And we're looking at the costs here, and let's look at the cost to kit out for example, a software engineer, and versus a traditional sort of, or somebody who works in a refinery. And I mean, it's not even, you know, you can't compare it. I mean, it's clear to see that one option is cheaper, is more viable from a returns perspective. It's, you know, it's yeah, it's almost, I mean, I don't want to say instant, but you can almost see the value because the remittances are coming straight into the person's account that's domiciled here. And what we propose is that Nigerians should have a plan of inserting 2 million Nigerians in global value chains over the next 5 to 10 years. And again, this is something that is not going, we don't think should happen at just the federal level, because, you know, it needs to happen at state level across the different states. Everybody needs to have their own sort of, will I say, brain capital index for their state, right? And maybe perhaps focus on one area maybe Edo State can be the call center state or something like that. Jigawa can be the animation hub, or, you know, so it needs to be that intentional. And we're proposing, if we achieve this, then we can really drive a lot of remittances, in a lot of FX from Nigerians still being, you know, without having to leave the country. And then finally, we say, what do we need to make this happen? So we know that these 4 things are critical. First is broadband, and having that right of way, you know, I mean, even almost at federal level, such that, you know, states can tap into it. The other thing we need is also favorable policies and initiatives that would support, you know, or make it easy for you to be able to, you know, to export brains in Nigeria. So maybe reduce maybe taxes on devices, come up with a sort of subsidy scheme for internet, or, you know, again, just come up with clever policies that we can use to tackle the issue. Okay, so just to round up very quickly, I think these are the 4 things that need to happen. Broadband, we need favorable policy, we need power, but not power from an infrastructure invested in traditional manufacturing, more like alternative power, power to power devices, to power internet modems and things like that. So we're not solving the NEPA issue here, we're just trying to power people to be able to export themselves. And finally, we need to invest in brain capital. So these are the areas that we think need to happen. With regards to the reports, if you just Google brain exports, PwC, it should pop up as the first option on your screen. Thank you so much for your time, and I do apologize for taking so long. Thank you.
No apologies necessary. Thank you so much, Mr. Ihebuzor, representing PwC Nigeria, for this extensive report on brain capital. And, you know, it was so interesting that I know that we can have a webinar just with you to expand more on this report. So please, you can post the link to our audience or participants so that they can search for the report, or you can Google it, as he said. It's going to be the first report on brain capital by PwC Nigeria. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to bring on Mr. Abiodun Odunnuga, who is he's a representative for the, or the CEO rather, of Friends of Nigeria Europe. Mr. Odunnuga, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Remi Alapo, for that introduction. And I want to say great insights from Chiwueze on the insights from PwC. Thank you so much. And also my big brother, Prince Akinwale Ojomo, for the invitation. And I just wanted to throw in, and maybe before that also to also appreciate our NIDOE chairman, Dr. Obasekola, also for the opening remarks. Before I go into my brief comments, what I'm going to do is just more like to put flesh to what everybody has said. And I think I want to give kudos obviously to Prince Ojomo for what he has done. This whole conversation started off as, it was just a few days ago, posting an article about, some of the engagements I had with respect to the UN in how to help with talent partnerships within Nigeria and Europe. And he said, let's have this conversation immediately. And before I knew it, I thought he was just talking, and before I knew it, there was already a link sent out, flyers here and there. And I just want to put it there that if everybody would take the matter of brain capital as urgent as he has taken this initiative, I think Nigeria will be better for it. So I want to say thank you, sir. Like I said again, for me, I think this conversation is quite ripe. And it's something that obviously would keep discussing and elaborating about. Just as a form of context, I think it was, I said McKinsey report that by 2034, Africa as a continent will be having a larger workforce than China or India. So that means, 2034 isn't just about 12 years. We'll be having a larger workforce, that is bigger than China or India. And so the question is, what kind of workforce are we building? What kind of workforce are we trying to leverage on to be able to position ourselves for such opportunities? One of the things that I've been engaged with respect to, the brain capital discussion was a recent project that just concluded with the IOM, International Organization for Migration, and also in partnership with the EU. So it's a EU-funded project for 3 years, and its 4th pilot just got concluded. And it was strictly about how to mainstream Nigerian talent into the labor shortage that Europe has. Just as we've seen from the other speakers who came before me, that there is a shortage in Europe, aged population, but beyond aged population, even the current young people or youths that they have, from their own research and insights, those young people or Europeans cannot solve the problem that they have in the country. And they looked out, like every normal country will look out for where can we outsource or where can we get talents to fill the spaces. And they found just 2 major countries in Africa, namely Nigeria and Senegal. And the past 3 years, they've been trying to mainstream this talent from Nigeria into countries like Luxembourg, Belgium, Italy, and Netherlands. And this is outside, obviously, other countries were also coming into Nigeria as a country, like Canada, Germany, UK, Qatar, trying to also get talents. And I think the major problem we have right now is maybe a lack of an holistic coordination, because there is the demand, which is obviously countries within Europe who have found out that Nigeria is a major pipeline for the talents they have. But in terms of having a coordinated effort on how this would become a brain capital, not just a brain drain, is what we need to talk about. And it's very interesting to see that even at the last Conference of Parties, this COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where climate change was discussed, brain capital came up as a new vector for sustainability. So in the whole discussion around sustainable development and climate change, for the very first time, global development stakeholders are talking about even brain capital, that this has to be mainstreamed into what sustainable development means. And so the burden on us as stakeholders here is to be able to now have a way to galvanize resources. There is the role, obviously, of the government, which PwC already mentioned, with respect to how to invest in policies that can help stakeholders in the ecosystem be more comfortable in trying to set up a soft landing for themselves. But so there's a place of education, which is very paramount, because the most important thing we need to ensure is that that pipeline is not shortchanged. In the PwC report I also read, which I think it's in this particular report, I was happy they mentioned, respect to, India and all of that, but generally in the world, there's about as of this year, the world has about 26.8 million software developers, 26.8 software developers. And it's been projected that by 2030, software developers will become 45 million. And that's about 68% increase. And so that means between now and the next 10 years, about 18 million new jobs within the software development world will be created. And what PwC was given as a challenge to Nigerian stakeholders like ourselves is, can Nigeria work together and capture just 2 million out of these 18 million jobs that will be offered in the next 10 years? Just 2, which is about 12% of the total number. And that's possible. So this has to do with obviously being able to mainstream, collaborators and ensure that we have a holistic policy that's able to not just change, the young people, but also be able to put Nigeria on the global map. And as already identified in the policy reports, creative sector and services are major, parts where we can mainstream the next level of young, vibrant minds to. Agriculture, manufacturing is taking a back seat when it comes to contribution to developed nations. As a matter of fact, when it comes to GDP, increase or GDP addition, services in the developed world accounts for 3/4 of employment. And that already tells us that we have no choice but begin to see how we can collaborate. And there's a large role that Diaspora has to be able to, fit into this whole discourse, because they sort of serve as a nudging for, employers to be able to have those talents. I'll give an example. During COVID, one of the things we did in our organization, or that we also did, our friends in Nigeria, was we talked with different multinationals in Europe. And one of the things we found out was that most of them had a problem with outsourcing their digital services to European startups and companies. Why? They wanted to reduce costs, but they also wanted to have the same quality. So we did a prototype, which asked them, can you ask us for this kind of service you are offering, and let's get Nigerian tech, startups to, be able to provide that service. By the time these Nigerian tech startups provided these services in the area of IT, they were very, they were very amazed. They gave them the same quality at a reduced price. And so they asked themselves, why are we stressing ourselves? If this probably would have cost us like 50,000 euros, and these players in Europe would not shortchange themselves and go lower. Nigerian players or the young people would still give us the same product at 20,000 euros, and they'll be happy because it works for them. We are also reducing costs, but we have the same quality. When I saw that, I built a business model around that to say there is a lot Diaspora can do in trying to, mainstream these things. And now, even though we're talking about Nigerians trying to migrate, as a matter of fact, I can tell you for free, the Nigerians who are earning those kind of money in Abuja, in Adamawa State, in Lagos, and Port Harcourt are not trying to jackpot, because they know that when they come and jackpot in Europe, they can't have a chef or a driver, they can't have a gate man. So they will come here, they will come and obviously mainstream into the system, and they'll have a lot of tax. So there is a lot, around the jackpot narrative that can be, it's not just an economic problem. So because when it comes to economics, most people will tell you they're comfortable earning well in Nigeria and creating a life that they cannot even live abroad. Most of the CEOs who even outsource these projects they ride on bicycles and bikes in Europe. So, let alone of having a chauffeur or having a chef. So, and I think that's where we need to have a collective voice to be able to see the role of startups and incubators, the role of the diaspora, the role of stakeholders. When I mean stakeholders, I also mean government agencies. The Ministry of Labor needs to have a voice in this kind of discussion. We need to have what's the vision of the Ministry of Education. It's time to also mainstream discussion around digital literacy as part of the curriculum, so that the pipeline is not deficient. We need to have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so that when we are talking about all of these brain capital, they should be able to negotiate on our behalf. They should be able to have that policy that puts Nigeria also on the spotlight to be able to ensure that there's a win-win partnership. One of the EU stakeholders mentioned in Belgium when I was there last week or 2 weeks ago, that at this point right now, they're also open to a tripartite partnership, meaning we don't just want to get your talents to come and then we should change you in Nigeria. What if we have the third leg, we get your talents, they serve us, but after 2 or 3 years, they go back to become the managers of the companies that they've worked with in Europe. That means they serve as the entry points for them, for the European companies to enter into the Nigerian markets. So that's what people are saying. So the Europeans are open, companies are open, but the question is, how do we galvanize all of these resources and be able to create a pathway that every major stakeholder can benefit from? And most importantly, the Nigerian young people, the demography is not changed. So I think it's a quite interesting discussion, and I'll just leave it at here. But once again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I'll be open for more interactions beyond this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abiodun, Mr. Abiodun Odunnuga, and thank you for sharing that quickly. And thank you for the earlier remarks, kind remarks about the action. And I think it's just a great time. And I must commend you what you're doing in EU as well, and of course the NIDO Europe as well. So without much ado, I think much time has been spent. Is just to have question and answers. To make this easier, I know the moderator has to step away because she has to do a class in New York City. So I will take some questions, and if we have questions, it can be typed in the chat room to make it easier, and I can read it out. Or if you raise your hand, or you show an intention, or if you see a remark or a question, so that can be taken quickly in the next 10 minutes. So I see some folks right here who actually maybe I see we actually, as a matter of fact, what earlier on Chiwueze mentioned has been going on. So I will just say this just to really push it out there. So Diaspora Innovation Institute, as an action organization, actually took up a project of an outsourcing site in our Ondo State, Nigeria. And this site actually is to provide outsourcing services. And some of the friends and partners in Delaware, in Maryland, have been actually utilizing, whereby the team here that are locally trained actually providing maybe website design services, design of actually the graphic of this global event actually was designed in our. So you realize that the global value chain that Chiwueze is talking about is actually happening. So obviously the continuation of it is very, very important, and I hope we should be able to have more of this. So let me see here. Do you have any questions here yet? Let's see. Okay. All right. So I think we will provide, I guess, some comments right here. Okay. So the key is that we will be able to provide this recording to everyone. So of course, the contact of the speakers actually will be provided as well. So, but I'm going to quickly mention this because it's very important, and I think Dr. Kelechi is here as well, and he is the Delaware African Coalition, and actually we did the partnership with them. And actually, if Dr. Kelechi, if you're available, I guess it's very important as well to hear from you as well as the partner. They were part of the partners collaboration at our digital center, which is an outsourcing hub that Chiwueze is talking about, of creating those hubs across countries. And actually, I like how Abiodun mentioned that even the state governors, the state officials should be very, very proactive. The people in the Ministry of Education and digital literacy and things like that. Because even at our digital center, our goal is to be able to train even 1 million students. We want students to be able to have a skill set before they leave high school, so that if they don't even have funds to go to college or to other location or tertiary, they will be able to really sustain themselves. So that's the new drive. And I think the earlier we get into it, the better to have the conversation. I think the diaspora can drive the narrative right here. You can sit in New York City and teach a class in Ile-Ife or somewhere in or in Ogbomoso. So the key is, I can see Dr. Kelechi is right here. I think he can make few remarks about what we're doing with our digital center, and the Diaspora, and the Delaware African Coalition. Dr. Kelly, I yield to you.
Okay, hello, good day, good morning, those of you in the US, and good afternoon, people in Nigeria and elsewhere. Certainly a delight. I want to thank our speakers, who have really enlightened me in particular about the opportunities that actually exist. And I especially want to thank Prince Akinwale for thinking along these lines. I'm a little disappointed that we don't have more people, but every conversation starts out with a few people who see the value in it and then continue and sustain it until perhaps other people join in. Where is that? Okay, Chiwueze, Pricewaterhouse, and I think the NIDO guy. The question has been asked about, doing this in a more coordinated, concerted manner, perhaps asking governments to become more involved. I really hope that some energies will be spent on sensitizing people about the need to do this. It sounds like it is small, but in fact, it is not. Somebody just sent something that I just saw about can the United States help the poor with their current immigration policy of taking, let's say, even if the immigration was taking 1 million people a year to the United States. The reality is that the United States does not have enough room to accommodate the people, how many, 5 or 6.8 billion people. So if you take 1 million people who want to go to the United States, you take 1 million people who want to go to Europe, you're still looking at billions of people who cannot leave their countries. And so this idea that some people have, which I think is completely ridiculous, but I imagine that it is so because they don't know any better, of running away and going to someplace else, as a way to have a better life is actually quite ridiculous. So I am hoping the likes of Pricewaterhouse and others like Diaspora Innovation Institute can be sensitizing people to the ridiculousness of trying to migrate because of opportunities, when in fact, you can do exactly what we're talking about here, sell your services around the world, leveraging technology. We need to get our young people to know that, to understand that, so that we stop this ridiculousness of running away, because it doesn't really make sense. But like I said, it does make sense to people because they don't know what it takes, or they don't know what is required, or they don't know about the opportunities that are available. So I want to applaud all the people listening here, to make concerted efforts to sensitize people about the fact that you can, export your services without leaving Nigeria, without leaving Africa. Because if you left Africa, who is going to develop Africa? Who are you expecting to develop Africa? So we need to take that responsibility and share our own information, sensitize our people, so that we can invest our energies and our strengths and our talents in developing our continent, so that we can earn the respect that we deserve as people. Because running away simply makes them look at us like foolish people, which we are. And I don't believe that any one of you would like to be a foolish person. I've been in the United States now for 41 years. I am not here by choice. I don't want to continue to be here, but I'm making the process of coming back. We have established a manufacturing facility that hopefully is going to be starting next year. So, with that, I am going to be, to be quiet. I know if you call me as a speaker, I can certainly speak on this subject of sensitizing people about the need for us to enlighten our young, our government, our leaders and stuff that we can really leverage technology to develop our place instead of looking to run away. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kelechi. And of course, you didn't mention the collaboration, which is actually the action of Delaware African Coalition and the Digital Center, because that's actually a project, a collaboration, which I think is an action that's
correct. And it is our belief. We applaud you for bringing that opportunity to our attention. It is our belief, to really leverage, sensitize, provide opportunities to those young people that their services, they could be something very as elementary as developing content, developing newsletters, developing websites and things like that. There are people doing events all the time, developing flyers. Okay, you can earn a little bit of money doing that, and while seeing your talents and energy being put to good use. That's part of why we are supporting that particular effort, and we're certainly we're willing to support additional efforts elsewhere as a demonstration of our commitment, really, that this thing that we're talking about, that people need to be empowered where they are and supported where they are to earn a decent living, leveraging technology. We're serious about it, and we know it's a viable option, for us really to engage our young people.
Thank you.
So we're doing that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I need to have you say it as a partner, right? So yeah. So without much ado, I think I have some few questions right here for Chiwueze. This is from Larry Korede. He's the co-founder of Recruit Hub, which is based out of Chicago. It says the focus is to bring Nigeria talent to the world. And the question is for Chiwueze and Abiodun, that that means the company cannot serve all the industry. And he's answering, asking that, what are the 3 industry or talent area that you advise or recommend so that their energy will be focused on that, because they are a lean startup company. So I'm not sure if Abiodun is still here, but Chiwueze, I guess you can just take a bite of that question. Thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me? Thank you for the question. So I think if I understand correctly, the question was around what industries, what talent area should we focus on? And I think the lowest hanging fruit has to be around technology and digital. And that's because, again, like I said, you don't have to go to conventional university for that. You can pick up a course and spend 3 months and really upskill yourself to start earning, even at par with people who have been in universities for 10 years, right? So that's the first part. Then the other part can be things around maybe accounting services. I mean, again, you don't really have to go to university to be able to do ICANN or to do ACCA, right? I mean, it's good to have that, but at the end of the day, that qualification can serve you and you can sort of be inserted into global value chains just having that certification as well. So it's really, I would say those 2, and things like call center. I mean, those ones are, I mean, there's no university to become a call center, but again, that's something that is in terms of barrier to entry for people, skill requirement is not as high as perhaps software engineering and maybe the other BPO services, which might require more higher sort of cognitive reasons. So I would say those 3 areas for me, I think would be the lowest hanging fruits. And that's the way I see it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chiwueze. I think we have any other questions. I know Chief Gani Udada made some remarks that how do we access some of the Innovation Institute programs. Please, your contact, we'll be able to forward and send out your additional information. And like I said before, that the recording of this webinar will be shared with everyone. So please feel free to leave your information, your contact, so that we'll be able to share that with you. And by the way, there is a migration and diaspora group, a WhatsApp group that we open. So equally, if you send your email to Diaspora Innovation Institute, just one word, at gmail.com, we'll be able to send you the link so that you can join the conversation. And of course, if you have anything to share in the future, of course, there will be an opportunity to do that. So I'm not sure if I see another question right here. And of course, we are kind of getting out of time right now because it's 4:35 p.m. West African time. If I have any other Let me see here. Any question, any remarks? I'm not sure. Chief Dada, would you like to actually make a reference? Chief Dada actually was a former NIDO Americas, right? Chair. So obviously it's been a long time. It's nice to see you, sir. Will you be able to make some few remarks? I yield to you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Prince Ojomo. I really appreciate this valuable service. I never even knew that you are 10 years old in this. But this is where we are right now to solve Nigerian problem. And I've checked PwC. I found it already, on my phone immediately as we are talking, because we would like to work with you or with your institute, because we are having program that is coming up before the end of the year too, on solving problems of 133 million problem in Nigeria from the American side here. Everything will be based in Chicago, and from there, I mean, you might know that Chicago is the gateway to the United States, when it comes to industrial as well as agriculture and everything like that. And technical, we have so many high, what do they call it, technical area here in Chicago that is preparing people in IT for all these developers and all kinds of things like that, being sponsored by the governor of the state. So thank you so much. This is where all diaspora are supposed to be relevant right now to solving the problem. But you're already in forefront from over there, according to what you just said right now. And we'll be ready to, when we get off from the program, we want every diaspora to be involved, because 133 million is a lot. And it's 50% of West African citizens. So I believe strongly in the statement of Mandela that Africans or Black people will not get respect until Nigeria get it right. Thank you so much.
Chief Gani, it's nice to see you again. And of course, looking forward to hang out with you as well and in future engagement, and keep safe in Chicago. So without much ado, if there are other questions, this will be closing maybe in 3 minutes. So please, like I said, leave your email number, email address, and your phone number as well, so that we'll be able to really keep this conversation. By the way, Diaspora Innovation Institute Hangout, I call it Hangout because we have a monthly event. Well, usually it's the last, actually last Thursday of every month, as a matter of fact. And this is a special one because it's very, very relevant. Most of them are spending some time in Europe right now to see the migration pattern and see how we could leverage some of the experiences in the last 10 years in driving this, more so that at least a lot of countries in Europe, and of course, some of them have challenges in really understanding how this can be solved. And at the same time, that we are bringing our own proactive solutions to the table, so that way, when they're not doing us a favor, quote unquote, like, oh, we are getting your people, while at the same time depleting the resources. So people can stay in, like Dr. Kingsley mentioned, that you can have millions of people stay in Nigeria and at the same time create value because they are part of the global value chain, which is very, very important. And using technology. So right now, where everybody is like in different locations in the world, and like I said jokingly that COVID has made the job of Diaspora Innovation Institute easier, right? So what we achieved in the last 2 years actually is more than what we achieved in the last 8 years, many thanks to COVID, because now, even some of the universities that we have partnership with, all of a sudden start calling us like, oh, we want to have conversation with you, want to sign MOU with Diaspora Innovation Institute. Because before we used to look for funds to bring maybe Chief Ganiyu, Dr. Kingsley from the United States to come to Ife or to University of Lagos to come and teach or spend 3 months exchange program. But now they can sit comfortably in wherever they are in Newark, in Chicago, and give a class. So that's the beauty of this. And we cannot actually let this opportunity slide. And that's why we're going to go after, and in a good way, some of the leaders and say, this is the right opportunity. You just need to really do less with this, and you can even achieve more, because if you're able to build, and most of them have offices and buildings, it's just a matter of putting in infrastructure, digital infrastructure in place, to make sure that this kind of connection with the diaspora really happens. So I know the diaspora are ready. I know my people, we're always ready to really give back or to really have an impact. And to me, we cannot let this slide by, and the earlier we get this thing done, the better. And we can now do this in no more in silos. We have to do this together in a more, like Chiwueze said, whereby maybe Ondo State can say, oh, I'm focusing on this. And this is the niche. Maybe Anambra State, they're focusing on this, and Abia, Kaduna. So every state is like, oh, you want to get a good call center program, you go to this state. And that can be like what we call a mapping of how this can be done. And again, thank you again so much. If there are no more questions or comments, then we can just close this session for the day. Again, on behalf of all the partners, I'm not sure. Do you have any other comments, Chiwueze, on the last final note? Chiwueze from PwC or Dr. Obasekola?
No, just to say thank you, sir, and just to say that we'll be obviously putting out the second part of this paper shortly that just details some of the policies. So please watch out for that.
Right. Thank you so much. And I know it has created a lot of buzz. And our quick deal is that we'll be able to take this as a roadshow to some of the states and say, this is the gospel of today. You need to really accept this because it's going to be favorable in the future. Because if you get 2 million, looking at 2 million of software, I think you can even do more because, but again, it's a good starting point to even have that happen. So if there are no any other comments.
Sorry, did you pay attention to what Hot School is doing in Nigeria?
Hot School, what's Hot School, which you can hear?
Well, they are doing the same, they are developing, they are teaching, they have about 3,000 students.
Okay.
Right now in Lekki.
Okay.
And they are placing them, handing about 60,000, 80,000 pounds
right
from Nigeria.
So at the end of the day, we're going to be able to really make sure that we have the conversation together so that people are not doing things differently, so we can have that a group or consortium that will be able to really create more value, because the more we are able to do it together and the more we have to really get more value. Thank you so much. And
that's the only solution.
Right. I can see NIDO Hungary right here. Thank you for joining. And I see Lady M. I see Michael Otogo. I'm just trying to acknowledge everyone here. Dr. Kelechi, that you spoke earlier on. Engineer Remi as well. Dr. Kabir Ahmed. I'm not sure which location you are. I know Dr. Obasekola is out of Europe. Chiwueze is in Lagos, Nigeria. Bola Alade is in the United States. Adebola Sakina, I'm not sure which location. Abidemi Ojuloge. Wow. Okay, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. So on behalf of Diaspora Innovation Institute, on behalf of the other partners as well, Friends of Nigeria and Europe, and Diaspora, NIDO, which is the Nigerian Diaspora Europe. I thank you so much for joining, and looking forward to a more conversation. Like I said, put in your name and number, your email address, and we'll be able to keep this going. Thank you so much for the time. And we talk about the Brain Capital Roadshow is continue, and we can have that conversation in your own area. Just let us know. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon or morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prince.